Last week I saw this long resignation letter on X from this man named Demetre Daskalakis. I hope I didn't butcher his name there. And as RFK JR continues to solidify his power within Health and Human Services, pushing out new recommendations, banning dyes that have been known to be detrimental to Americans for generations, and prioritizing studies that are previously ignored over others. What this really signifies with this new wave of resignations, this man included, is that we are entering a new age of medicine in the United States, and hopefully for the better, even though I definitely have my reservations on that. My resignation letter from the CDC. Dear Dr. Howery, I am writing to formally resign my position as Director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, effective August 28th, 2025, close of business. I am happy to stay on for 2 weeks to provide transition if requested. I feel like you could have just said effective immediately because this was posted on the 27th, I believe, so the next day. Whatever. This decision has not come easily as I deeply value the work that the CDC does in safeguarding public health and am proud of my contributions to that critical mission. However, after much contemplation and reflection on recent developments and perspectives brought to light by Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I find that the views he and his staff have shared challenge my ability to continue my current role at the agency and in the service of the health of the American people. Enough is enough. Now, I'm not going to read all of this because he has a rather lengthy resignation letter, but the TLDR, before I even continue, is he resigns because he feels like medicine has become too politicized. And the strange thing is that a lot of people agree, but just not in the way that he thinks. In fact, one thing that a lot of people, and especially those on the right, have felt is that the world's response to, I don't even know if we can even still say the word on YouTube, that virus from China. After years of dealing with that, we saw exactly what the government would do. We saw how the government, with cooperation of the CDC, would cram down authoritarian rules onto businesses. We saw mothers who were voluntarily selling things online and following all the rules about spacing and cleanliness, having their shops shut down. We saw how people couldn't voluntarily go to a gym to stay fit because there's some national emergency going on. We saw how our children prevented from interacting with each other. Students lost 1, 2, and some even 3 years of proper schooling in person and social interactions during those critical years, all over something that would not have affected them in the first place. Based on their age group and what a few months after infection we know wasn't a big problem for them. So Dr. Dimitri's primary complaint about medicine becoming too politicized is true, but the problem is that this is coming on the heels of medicine being politicized, just not in the way that he cares about. So naturally, as we're going to see later, this all just fell on deaf ears. But let me continue. I'm unable to serve in an environment that treats the CDC as a tool to generate policies and materials that do not reflect scientific reality and are designed to hurt rather than to improve public's health. The recent change in the adult and children's immunization schedule threatened the lives of youngest Americans and pregnant people. Wait. Pregnant people. Isn't there a name for that? Isn't there like, a name that is shorter than that consists of 1 to 2 syllables? Maybe moms, mothers, pregnant mothers, expectant mothers, pregnant people. That seems political, don't you think? He continues on talking about how he tried to get this changed and how he basically objected to how the vaccination schedules were changed and feels like the CDC has been transparent enough with the American people. He then continues to explain how many policies have been retrofitted and how announcements have been done poorly with regards to people being fired from, I believe, the ACIP by posts on Twitter instead of by direct announcement or direct communication, which of course the right would just frame as cleaning house.
Don't let the door hit you with a good Lord split you.
The recent term of reference for the COVID vaccine work group created by this ACIP puts people of dubious intent and more dubious scientific rigor in charge of recommending vaccine policy to a director hamstrung and sidelined by an authoritarian leader. Their desire to please the political base will result in death and disability of vulnerable children and adults. Their base should be the people they serve, not a political voting bloc.
No, think of the children.
Sure, this honestly sounds great if this were a New York Times op-ed, but from what I'm reading, and again, like I said, I'm only pulling out bits and pieces here because it's really long, he sounds like a very political person, and I'm honestly glad he's not there anymore. I think he probably would have been fired. He probably read the tea leaves and realized he's gonna get fired out of here, so he might as well just, retire and take whatever package he can on the way out. Not to mention, this is following a recent trend of people on the left deciding to fight back by quitting or running away. I don't even understand that. The recent shooting at CDC is not Ron resigning. My grandfather, who I am named after, stood up to fascist forces in Greece and lost his life doing so. I am resigning to make him and his legacy proud. I am resigning because of the cowardice of a leader that cannot admit that his and his minions' words over decades created an environment where violence like this can occur. I reject his and his colleagues' thoughts and prayers and advise they direct those to people that they have not actively harmed. Okay, now it's obvious. We're probably halfway through this, and he goes and says, oh, the recent shooting isn't why I'm resigning because of the recent shooting. That's basically what he said. This isn't why I'm doing it, and then proceeds to admit that that's why he's doing it.
Who are you? You. No, not me, you. Yes, I am you.
And then he's also like, oh, my grandfather, I was named after stood up to fascists, and I'm gonna stand up to them too, by running away. I don't even understand this mindset. If you thought it was so bad, then go in there, do your job, weather the political winds, and if you get let go, you get let go. But you did your best. But no, we're gonna stand our ground by running. For decades, I have been a trusted voice for the LGBTQ community when it comes to critical health topics. Not political, by the way. I must also cite the recklessness of the administration in their efforts to erase transgender populations, cease critical domestic and international HIV programming, and terminate key research to support equity as part of my decision. What does equity have to do with medicine? I'm sorry, what? Public health is not merely about the health of the individual, but it is about the health of the community, the nation, and the world. The nation's health security is at risk and in the hands of people focusing on ideological self-interest. Not gonna lie, it sounds like that's just you, buddy. Also, anytime somebody says community, I don't know, it's one of those buzzwords that the moment I hear it, I immediately think, oh, this person isn't worth listening to. Now, technically, he's not wrong. Public health is not just about the individual. It's about a body of individuals. It's about how a nation moves and how a nation decides to treat its population, how a population decides to treat health and safetyness. But I don't think that's what he means when he means community, the nation, and the world. He sees this as a global idea, a holistic, worldwide view of the science or the medicine, however you want to put that. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I have a feeling that he means that the United States owes the world medicine, or the United States owes the world programs. And I don't agree with that. And that definitely goes into politics, because those things are voted on by Congress, or divvied up by the administration, or recommended by the CDC, etc. Those are all political decisions, not health decisions. So again, he's the political one here. Thank you again for the support and guidance I've received from you and previous CDC leadership throughout my tenure. I wish the CDC continued success in its vital mission, and that the HHS reverse its dangerous course to dismantle public health as a practice and as an institution. If they continue the current path, they risk our personal well-being and the security of the United States. Sincerely, Demetre Daskalakis, MD, MPH, he, his, him. Okay, I already distrust people who put their doctorates in their name. I feel it's just extremely pretentious. I don't put my master's in my name because who cares? But we definitely double down here. Look, like I said, I think we're definitely entering a new era of medicine in the United States. And I do think that there are some things that RFK JR is doing that aren't necessarily good. Like I was reading a post, I don't remember who it was by recently. I think it was Eric Erickson, where he was saying because of the new rules that the CDC is putting out, it's making things harder for him and his wife, who I think had cancer, to be able to get the vaccinations that they actually do need. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. In fact, other things, to play devil's advocate here for Dimitri, I have people on my timeline who are constantly complaining about vaccines and saying that they're all terrible and they should all be done away with, especially the COVID vaccines. They should be just done away with and it's no good because they all harm people. That's not true. They definitely have a place. Vaccinations have a place in society. They have a use and they're actually good. I think there are certain vaccines that perhaps we should pay more attention to, but overall, I am pro-vaccines. Yay. So don't delete me, YouTube. But does that mean I want my child to have every single possible vaccine? No, I try to make smart, wise, informed decisions. I figure out which ones in the schedule I think are useful and which ones aren't. Like for instance, when it rolls around every year and they try to force every flu vaccine down your throat, I don't care. Like I'll just get the flu naturally, and if I don't, then whoop-de-doo, it doesn't matter to me. But for my son, if he has to get the DTaP, I think it is, vaccines, yeah, get those. Those are important. Measles, important. In fact, I think the new latest outbreaks of measles are completely unnecessary. I think in that aspect, he's right. It's not necessarily a good direction for our country. But we have to remember, why did this happen in the first place? Why is it that people no longer trust medical officials? Yes, we've had the big backdrop of COVID-19 that happened for several years that completely shut down America. But let me change the framing a little bit with a personal story. I recently had 3 wisdom teeth come in. And of course, as with all wisdom teeth, they have tons of problems and need to be removed. In order to remove them, I had to, be put under for surgery by anesthesia, my dentist decided that I had to have a consultation or whatever to decide if anesthesia is right for me, or to make sure that my primary doctor would actually sign off on anesthesia. So I'm like, all right, I go in, see my primary care doctor, and halfway through they ask questions about the recent flu vaccine that's available, I think, through September. And I mentioned that I might end up getting it because my wife was recommending that I get it because of my son. She wants to make sure that I'm not down for several weeks because we have another child coming, Everything's all right? Well, then she explains, oh, I think you should get the vaccine because it's good for you, but you try to make sure that every year or whatever the biggest wave of flu gets treated by a vaccine schedule. And then she says, you should get it because you never know what might happen to you. In fact, I know one patient that had encephalitis because she got the flu. If I remember correctly, encephalitis is inflammation of the brain. So basically, the flu somehow got through the blood-brain barrier and caused swelling in her brain, which can lead to death, which is bad, definitely. But then she continued to explain how if I don't get this vaccine, I could end up with brain swelling and die. That's basically the long and short of it. And I understand what she was saying. It probably was even for my benefit. But the problem is that there's a fine line between informing someone and fearmongering. And a lot of people will consider that to be fearmongering. Here, you must get this flu vaccine, and if you don't, you'll die of encephalitis. Like, I don't know, bro. I feel like you didn't put necessarily forward the best case. That's like saying if I don't get a particular brand of car, an asteroid is gonna fall out of the sky and crush my vehicle. Like, okay, technically, if I don't get a sturdy enough car, an asteroid could in fact fall out the sky and destroy my vehicle. But is that really the common case? I think perhaps if she made a case and said, hey, you have another child coming up, you said, and if you're down for several weeks, the flu can be really terrifying, and it can be in some cases be deadly, but man, you don't want to take that chance. You don't want to take the chance of your wife feeling that she's all alone when you're down with the flu and you have a headache and intense fevers and you're sitting in bed and you have the shakes. That's much more of a reasonable argument than you can die from encephalitis. And unfortunately, during the massive time of you-know-when epidemic, we were being bombarded with tons of worst possible case scenarios just like that. And that is what broke people's trust in medicine. And unfortunately, people like Dimitri don't understand that. People like Dimitri only see their worldview. They don't see the worldview from the commoner, the non-medical person. So they don't realize that people like RFK Jr. is a result of the commoner being ignored for years and given crazy worst case possible scenarios for everything. You need to get X injection because worst case possible scenario. You need to get this vaccine because of worst case possible scenario. You need to shut down your shop and lose your livelihood because of worst case possible scenario. You know, your life savings that you put into that restaurant that's been open for 4 months and hasn't been able to pay back the full loan for, that everyone loves and comes to the area just to hang out and enjoy getting teas. Well, now we have to shut it down because of worst case possible scenario. Are you gonna get reimbursed by the government for that? No, you just lose all your money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars down the drain. Sorry, it's an epidemic. So sad. Can we try to maybe work with this? Can we maybe have people sign waivers, or nope? Can we maybe have people distance or something? Nope. Can we maybe have people who know that the epidemic is going on try to stay really clean as possible and still eat at my restaurant so I don't literally lose everything? Nope. Okay, then so can I at least get the dyes out of my food so that my kids aren't drinking neon green radiated pop? Oh, of course not. No, that's too much to ask for. And now the comments below his post? They weren't as generous as I've been. All I needed to see was that he felt the need to add his pronouns at the end. That told me all I needed to know. Already saw one manifesto from the mentally ill today. Can't do two. No one cares. Just leave. Guaranteed no one reads this long resignation. Unfortunately, I did. 1.5 times. LOL. Bye, weirdo. I can't even read like half of these. This is widely considered to be the first resignation filibuster in CDC history. And then I posted, this isn't about politics, it's about science. Write a 1,221 word essay about political beliefs. Then he said unto Felicia, make haste with thy departure.
Bye.
If a director at the CDC cannot even distinguish people in the abstract from women in particular with regards to pregnancy, then you don't belong at the CDC. You're too anti-science for the position. I am unable to serve in an environment that treats CDC as a tool to generate policies materials that do not reflect scientific reality and are designed to hurt rather than to improve public health. Then you should have resigned in 2020, you idiot. And so on and so forth. And really the last two comments I think get to the heart of the problem. This person, Dimitri, thinks that they're objective and independent and truly for science. But in reality, whatever they think is science has just become a religion to them and has clouded their mind. They're not able to understand other points of view because they don't want to understand other points of view. They're not able to work with RFK Jr. because they don't want to work with RFK Jr. RFK Jr. in the Trump administration represents a political belief that he does not hold, therefore he does not care to even work with them. A true neutral person or a true scientist, in my opinion, would, even under belief sets that don't agree with his, would still try to work for, and find the science. And if there are problems with it, then he would say, hey, this isn't what we should be working towards. You maybe put out memos or put out requests up the chain. And if the leadership doesn't agree, then so be it. So what? Do your job. But instead, we have to say things like, pregnant people. I wonder who that could be. In the end, I'm glad Dimitri has resigned, and I hope hundreds, perhaps even thousands more like him would also resign. I wish they would go away.
Bye.
I really do want our science, our medicine to be more neutral and to actually take into account more studies and actually take into account more of science. What I feel has really happened because people like this feel comfortable just saying things like pregnant people or not recognizing the damage that the COVID epidemic really did to society. I feel like these people, because they feel comfortable just saying this and acting like this, they put blinders on to reality. And I don't really want my medical professionals having blinders for reality. And when they have those blinders, it makes me doubt everything that they do. Everything. I trust nothing that this person has said or done. There are other things he had done in the past with regards to LGBT groups that had shown up in the comments. Honestly, I don't really care about his personal life. He can do whatever he wants, no matter how silly I think it might be. But the core problem, in my opinion, is that he's just too biased. And if it takes a crazy former Democrat to get these extremely biased people to finally leave, then that's a risk I'm willing to take. If it takes just a few Americans getting measles here and there to correct over the long run our trust in medicine and science, then unfortunately that's the way it has to be. I addressed this to Dr. Dimitri directly, even though he'll never see this video. Dr. Dimitri, your beliefs are what led people to not listen to you. The beliefs of you and people who believe similarly to you will cause people to reject you. And because of that, you should think about why that is instead of trying to assign blame. Because I assure you, assigning blame is going to cause you to miss something that is very important. As I've always said, what use is a philosopher if he can't convince anyone of his philosophy? What use is a medical professional if no one cares about his diagnosis? What use is a resignation letter posted publicly if everyone just summarily mocks you in the comments? I think there's a reason for that. I think the problem is your mindset and your message. Your mindset is wrong, is wholly political, and the way you're delivering the message is entirely incorrect. You should reevaluate the way you see the world, and at the very least, reevaluate the way that you present yourself to the public. Perhaps maybe more of these ideas would be more palatable if people feel like you're being more honest. But in the end, at least half, if not more, of the American people feel like you don't deserve to work at the CDC. And now that you're gone, they will rejoice that you have left. But anyway, guys, thanks for stopping by. I normally do cultural content like this, talking about popular situations or things that I think are important, well, in our culture. But let me know in the comment section, have I been too mean to Dr. Dimitri? Is this something that you feel as well? I try to be as fair as possible. I try to kind of give both sides because, well, I'm hopelessly addicted to nuance. I can't help it. I don't want to necessarily rag on him, but I think he's brought it on himself. So let me know if you agree, because in the end, if this delivery doesn't work for you, I would like to know. I want to serve you, the viewer. As I've said in previous videos, I want to serve you, the viewer, and bring you something that's entertaining or at least informative. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!